Welcome to The Growth Project, a podcast brought to you by AMPLOS. Special episode here today. We've got everyone in the house, Dr. Cory Shaffer, Dr. Milt Lowder, and myself, Dr. Drew Brannon. Great to be with you guys.
Good to be here.
Gentlemen,
let's do it.
Yeah, excited about this opportunity, excited about learning and sharing some of the ideas and lessons we've learned along the way.
So, unique day here at AMPLOS headquarters. I'll just call it what it is. And it was a unique weekend that we want to spend a little bit of time talking about today. And so we realize when it comes to our listeners, one of the things we love about our listener base is all parts of the world, all interest, all industries. And yet we also know that we do have a segment of folks who have an interest in sports. And as you all are aware, that's a part of the work that we do, particularly in the college football space. And so, Dr. Shaffer, what was unique about this weekend in the college football world for AMPLOS?
Well, AMPLOS, there's only 4 power conferences, I guess they're called these days, right? And we represented 3 different conferences in their championship games, which was pretty awesome. And not only represented, but then came out and each of our teams won. And if I were to venture a guess, I'd probably put some money on there's probably not any other group around the country who can say something like that.
Yeah, just pretty surreal. And what an opportunity for us, the people we partner with, to see the principles we believe in come to life. And whether that's for a season, whether that's for a game. And I think what you were saying, Drew, is, hey, a lot of the work we do is in the sports space, but what we believe these mental skills make you successful in sport, make you successful in business, make you successful in life. And so it's neat to see these come to life for a team in a moment that we believe can help create some separation. That mental game, that mental preparation can create separation. I think the championship games this weekend for all of us represented that you needed every little bit.
Right.
You needed every little bit to finish and get the job done. Yours was probably the least exciting finish, but still pretty exciting.
I bring plenty of anxiety into every game just as a spectator. So it was there until the end. But yeah, we pulled it out. We looked good. We looked good overall. I'm pleased.
So let's go through it a little bit. And so we want to focus our conversation today on with a mindfulness toward the conference championship games that we had this weekend, and thinking about, all right, so what seemed to be one of, not the only, because it's never just one thing that tips the scales to whether a team wins or loses, but what did we see at play, particularly in the world of kind of the psychological constructs that are at play that made a difference on that field for our respective teams on Saturday. And so these are themes, of course, that didn't just show up on Saturday. These things have been true throughout the season, and it's hard to put your finger on just one. But Cory, we'll start with the Ducks. And
are we doing by rank order of the CFP football selections? Is that we're doing?
Not necessarily.
Not
necessarily.
I wonder if that will hold true here, though, over the remainder of the podcast, if it'll be in order.
I don't know. But when you think about Saturday night and really what it took and what showed up on that field from a psychological standpoint for the Ducks, what really kind of rises to the top of the list for you?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. It's really hard to just pinpoint one thing. I think bigger picture, oddly enough, because that's not necessarily my style. But when I think more collectively over just the course of the season and how it culminated on Saturday night, I think really what you saw all year long was buy-in just from the players about Coach Lanning's vision for the program, what he wants us to be all about, the values or the DNA traits showing up, all of those things, but just the complete total buy-in from the players, I think was represented all year, and then again culminated more so on Saturday night. So in terms of buy-in, I know Milt mentioned prior to jumping on here, the right word there might be engagement.
Yeah.
Right. Just to use some terms we've talked about here on the podcast, and in the corporate space, maybe a better phrase, but just complete engagement, buy-in, a connectedness within the program, starting at the top, of course, with Coach Lanning, but down to the coaches, the staff, to the players. I think it was evident all year.
Yeah, so I like that. You see the culmination of that happen on Saturday. You've been with Coach Lanning from the beginning. Has that been an evolution in terms of them buying in? Did it take a little bit of time, or you think everybody's had this buy-in from the very beginning?
No, it's taken time for sure. This is year 3 for Coach Lanning and his staff and putting a team together. And there's certainly high expectations. Early in the season, I think we came in preseason top 5. So there was always an expectation or a standard about what we were quote unquote supposed to do, externally. And early in the season, that did not show up. If you guys remember, we talked about it. Our first few games, right. Again, we struggle with an FCS team and then need the last play of the game, a walk-off field goal basically to beat Boise. Now, granted, Boise's a playoff team and they're good, but it was a little bit shaky early on. I think maybe what was a little bit different about this year compared to years past was just, Coach Lanning and I we cooked up some crazy ideas before the season even started to sort of, present to the players and sort of a theme and an idea to get behind. And that's what I mean is I think early in the year, there was probably some questions within the group around man, are we really going to be able to do this? But credit to them, they just kept at it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Credit to Coach Lanning and his staff for just continuing to kind of preach the right message and, develop some shared language and all these things. But I think you saw that buy-in just continue to rise and rise and rise and rise as the season went on. And you guys have both experienced this in very real ways. Y'all got national championships under your belt. So you know what it's like once you get a little bit of momentum and that starts to kind of build within the program. That's what I was feeling all year with our group, which was pretty cool.
All right, so follow-up question on that I think is relevant with this buy-in thing and of note to provide context. So what was really unique about when Dan left Georgia and took the head job at Oregon, when people make those moves, it looks different for every person, but people might not realize he didn't bring anyone. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes people, hey, I brought a couple position coaches, or I brought he didn't bring a single person from Georgia. And so he had an idea of his mind and his blueprint of what he wanted to look like he needed to get buy-in for. But can you talk a little bit about kind of some of the behaviors of leadership that he exemplifies at such a high level that really drives the buy-in? Because he was starting literally from scratch. No players, no coaches.
And never been a head coach, right?
Never been a head coach.
Yeah. I think specifically, and I'll focus in on this year, some of the things that we were probably more intentional about and, having learned from you guys and how y'all have done things for a while. This year, he leaned a little bit more heavily on a specific group of leaders within the program. So had a little bit more of an established leadership group. Back in the spring, we did a retreat to get some alignment within that group and get some buy-in. So he did a good job of making sure he was touching base with that group on a regular basis to kind of keep the pulse of just the team and the players, right? Again, that's one thing that maybe from the outside looking in, you just don't fully grasp, but to be one guy leading a program of 120, whatever, it's hard to know exactly where the pulse is on every single guy. But you need every single guy. So that was a little bit different this year, which I thought was really good. I think ultimately, though, Coach Lanning's his gift is to just relate to connect with, inspire, motivate his players. It's unbelievable.
Agreed.
And that's sort of behind the scenes. My role is to try to help, as I mentioned, just with some of the messaging that the guys hear on a weekly basis. But I don't think there are many people that could bring it to life quite like he does. Mm-hmm. And I wish I wasn't putting more fixed language to that, but that is part of his gift, I think, is his ability to take something and really just bring it to life in such a way that the players, again, I think he gets the players bought in, right? Some of the ideas, and I mentioned this, some of the ideas and the themes and the messaging for the season, if I were to slide that sheet in front of a lot of people, they'd be like, what in the world is this? And how is this supposed to motivate or inspire my team? But that's what he is so phenomenal at. And again, I don't know how many coaches in the country would be able to do it quite like he does it.
But it doesn't mean what I hear you say, that's his gift, that's his gift. And one of the ways, and we'll talk about what my contract was later on, but one of the ways is we've had success at these programs primarily because the leader, the head coach, is bought in. And so how he delivers that, but he believes in the message. And he believes in what he's doing. And with that kind of confidence, maybe everybody is not as charismatic or transformational or inspiring, but it doesn't mean you can't use your gift to achieve buy-in in a certain way. Like there's a certain vision and values. How he delivers that may be different. Coach Swinney's excellent at that as well. But that's a way to achieve buy-in is one. He has to believe before anybody else does.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then because he's so bought into it and believes in it so much, he brings a sense of accountability to it then, right? From the top is this, because this person's bought in, there's an accountability that everybody's going to be bought in. And, I told you guys this story. I think it's just representative of where the program is at in year 3 with him and the buy-in from the group, the connectedness, all these different things. But you can find this video floating around on the internet if you look for it. But the Big Ten championship game MVP, Tez Johnson, his wide receiver, I think he had 181 yards on 11 catches, like fantastic game. But he's telling this story afterwards when he was being interviewed. He went up to Coach Lanning prior to the start of the fourth quarter and just said, and Lanning confirmed that this happened. And he just said, like, I need your best 15 minutes right now. And I'm like,
that's big time.
And
I've been on a lot of sidelines. That's unique.
I'm a Coach Smart and Coach Swinney. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, that's
and I don't think Dan flinched. But that's my point. Is like there's such a buy-in and sort of an accountability from everybody that like, hey, if you're going to hold me accountable, Coach, like
that's a huge piece.
Yeah.
That's what I mean is just there's such alignment and engagement, whatever the word is you want to use, I think from top to bottom within the group right now. And it didn't start there, right? But from week 1 to where we are now in week 15 or 16 or whatever it is, you saw it just grow and grow and grow. So.
Yeah, a couple of things. Not only when your head coach or leader buys in, but when your best players buy in. And then one of the things we talk about, one characteristic of a great culture is you speak the same language. Now, you say it in your own, that's not a cult, but you say it in your own words, but you create some language pieces that shows your understanding and knowledge and application of the things that we believe in. For him to walk up and say, hey, I need your best 15 minutes, right? That's a common language that we know what that means. What you've done such a good job at Georgia, we know what it looks like. And so being able to hold yourself accountable to that in that moment means that Oregon football is bigger than Dan Lanning, it's bigger than Tez Johnson, it's bigger than the team.
And I would say, I mean, even to strengthen what you're saying too, Milt, is I think your best players have to buy in.
Yeah.
Because, you think about the amount that a head coach of a college football team these days spends a lot of time in front of his team. And as great as Dan is, there are some guys in that room who tune him out. And so that's where your best players, they got to carry the water. And when they do, their voices become even more influential than the head coach sometimes.
Well, I think we would say the best teams we've ever been a part of, the best players have been the best leaders.
Yeah,
they've bought in the most. They see the vision, they put it into words, and then they have the chance, as Drew said, to say it in maybe a different way than Coach Lanning or our coaches, but they also are holding them accountable off the field as well.
Yeah, and I think, again, the kind of shared language and all these things we've talked about, I've seen this from your teams in recent years, but it's now you start paying attention, and in the post-game interviews and the press conferences and stuff, like the players start sounding a whole lot like Coach Lanning.
That's what
and that's what, it's indicative of like, man, they are all in. Like all the chips are to the center of the table for these guys, and you can hear it in what they're saying.
Yeah,
and I don't think they're doing that to check a box,
no.
Or sound a certain way. Those guys tend to be pretty off the cuff, and so if they're saying it, I think they mean it.
Well, just a quick interjection to your point. So in our game Saturday night, final drive, but big moment, we had a running back fumble the ball on the 3-yard line, and we had one of our wide receivers was covering down on it and jumped on it and recovered it, and they asked about it after the fact, and he said, well, Coach always says effort counts twice. And that was just me doing what Coach says. So there you go. Grit.
I love it. The effort equation. Yep. So I don't know what else we want to cover here about buy-in, but one of the things maybe we can help our listeners for each of these constructs. Okay, what can they do in their life and their business? And they aren't all playing for conference championships, but they all are trying to win at something, whether it's life or business. Buy-in. What would some advice be? You've already mentioned some things that Lanning does well and what you've done to help that. What would be some thoughts we would have to make it transferable?
Well, again, I think you said it from the start, like it's got to start with him. But part of that is you have to show them what the vision is. And that's why I do think this year, and I mentioned this specifically, us having kind of a theme and something we could get around to really base the entire year off of, I think was really helpful, because all it was like, here's the vision for what we're going to do. Like, we're going to take over the Big Ten, period.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody's kind of thinking that, right? Like, the goal, if you were to ask a guy, is like, yeah, we want to win a conference championship. We want to win a national championship. Would every single college football team, at least many of them, would say that's always the goal. Win the conference, win the national championship. But to bring it to life and put some language to it and really kind of paint a picture and get the guys, like, bring an edge to it a little bit, was sort of our goal. And what I really tried to do, like, that I do think was really unique, but all it was really just, if you think about it, it was just him painting the vision for, here's what we're going to do this year.
And here's not what we're going to do, but here's how it's going to look. Here's how we're going to do it. I hear that as well.
Yeah, that was more the week to week and the day to day and all that. But the foundation of it is always going to be, the preparation and, the focus and the effort and all the things we talk about and the team DNA traits. But I do think, for listeners, like, there's got to be some type of a vision. If you're going to get buy-in, people got to know, like, where are we going and what's this all about? And what are the reasons that we have to kind of get on board with all this? Like,
yeah, it's hard to be inspired if you don't have a clear vision.
Mm-hmm. So, I would say that, just a reminder. I think obviously this time of year too, good for everybody to take a step back, think about your personal vision, or if you are in a leadership role, what's the vision for your team, for your company, that kind of thing. So,
Yep.
All right, good stuff.
Man.
Okay, all right, so now we're going to go from the Big Ten to the SEC champion.
Number 2 seed.
Number two seed is next. And so you guys have had some. I mean, think about 8 overtimes at Georgia Tech. Think about overtime here in the SEC championship, first one ever, I believe, if I heard that correctly. Correct. For the SEC championship.
Believe, but that's right.
Quarterback goes out. Some challenges. We talk all the time. It's hard to prepare for what you can't predict. What would be the construct that you picked out that you thought really was on display Saturday night or Saturday afternoon?
This feels like a layup question because, man, definitely resilience, which is one of our 4 core values or DNA traits, like Cory mentioned a minute ago. I mean, there's no doubt that resilience, which we define in several terms, but one of them is simply like, can you keep going?
Yeah.
Like, will you keep going despite what's happening to you? And that's been our season. I mean, I go all the way back to when we lost Alabama, and it was the first regular season game we'd lost since 2020. And
that's an amazing statistic.
And we were like kind of left for dead at that point. We lost Alabama, and they've got a first-year coach, and Georgia isn't what they once were, and there was some truth to that, honestly. I mean, if you look at it objectively, the players that we've lost in recent years to the draft. You can't put 15 guys in the league and then 13 guys in the league and just be the same exact team. You just can't do that. So talent-wise, we kind of knew that going in. Of course, that's not the only deciding factor to how good you can be. But there was a whole narrative that got a lot of teeth to it very, very quickly about, like, well, there goes Georgia. And yet we talked about it literally the very next day. I can remember being on the phone with Kirby on that Sunday about, hey, look, we're just going to lay in the weeds and keep getting better and just let this thing play out, which is resilience, right? You keep going.
Can I just laugh just a little bit? Georgia hadn't lost a game since 2020. They went back, like, we're going to lay in the weeds. Nobody's going to ever talk about Georgia. We're just like this little old team from Athens nobody's ever heard of.
We're just going to do our thing.
This feels like a similar trajectory of another team that had recently won a couple of championships. Little old Clemson, just sneaking up on the college football world.
There may be a theme here. I don't know.
So we tried to lay in the weeds, and then got.
But that means what? I mean, let's just clarify. I'm laughing, but
it just means to not let outcomes determine how you think about you and how you go about your business.
Yeah,
and so that's what we did. And
don't get caught up in the noise. Let other people talk about the noise.
Well, we call that FIBU, which I don't need to define.
Yeah, I know.
Look it up.
Have you figured that out?
I know what that means.
Yeah.
So, but and I think if there's ever a year in college football where it's been important to be resilient, it's this year because it's been absolutely crazy. And then we went through a very similar thing against Ole Miss. We lose to Ole Miss, and they whooped our tail that day, and we're the better team on the field. And there he was like, man, at that point we were out of the playoff. We weren't going to be in the playoff, out of the conference championship race. We were just little, I guess if we were ever little old Georgia, it was then. And same deal, like, hey, you know what? We're going to continue to be resilient. And so we did that a bunch this year. And so sure enough, we find ourselves on Saturday night and we come into halftime. Carson gets hit pretty good in the last play of the first half. We come in, medical people do their thing and decide he's not going to be playing in the second half. So here we are again, right?
Yeah. I feel like I'm just going to interject. This is more just football fan. You mentioned you can't prepare for what you can't predict.
Yeah.
So I don't think Texas was prepared to bring in a running quarterback. And it
Yeah,
ended
it's
up
funny. I was
working
thinking
in your
about
favor.
Georgia. You're talking about Texas. Yeah.
I think it ended up working in your favor because I think they were prepared for Beck, and it showed in the first half. He comes out, and now you got a guy who is a little bit more mobile.
Gunner's
uses legs,
a true dual threat.
and it was kind of a game changer, at least in my mind.
There's no doubt.
I mean, I got to be honest. Obviously, I can get lost in Clemson. I didn't even know who the backup quarterback was.
Most people didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting. There was a joke about that. Is like other than Carson, most people that know Georgia football, the other guy they knew his name was our fourth team quarterback, and that's because he transferred from Arizona State and was a big time recruit who was caught up in a lawsuit with Florida about his NIL situation. So people outside of didn't know Gunner Stockton was. So, but it was just that moment of like, all right, can you keep going? And can you keep going in a way where you retain belief, you don't allow your circumstances to begin to fill in the blanks for your future? And,
one of the things gritty people do, I mean, you guys laugh. I play that homegrown song for our team, and it's because of what I want our team to know. You got everything you need and nothing that you don't. Uh-huh. And what resilient teams do, and they fight with what they have.
Yeah.
And so as much as they love Carson, and he's obviously been there and dominated at the highest level, you didn't have him anymore.
Right.
But resilient people, there's a time to feel sorry for yourself. You have no time at halftime.
No time.
and you got to reset, reload, and go fight with what you have and believe in who you have and figure out a way. And I think that's why resilience is, one, it's one of your core values, but two, it's you look for opportunities to develop it. Yep. And imagine if you'd have had a different loss or a different mindset after Alabama, if you'd have given in or Ole Miss, you wouldn't have had that moment on Saturday.
Yep. No, there's no doubt. Like I put it this way, we had plenty of chances to practice our resilience workouts this year.
Well, that's what I was going to mention, though, is we talk all the time, again, resilience or grit is for the long term, but it's built in the day-to-day.
Correct, yeah.
And that's what I think people probably don't realize is, I know that Georgia's notorious for this because Coach Lanning brought it to Oregon, and it was a shock to the system for everybody involved. But just how stinking hard it is on just your normal like day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
But can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah,
I would argue
point.
that's where some of the resilience is built. Is not necessarily on that day resilient just showed up. Right. It's practiced day in and day out, and you're resilient in whatever the first moment of the year is, the loss to Alabama. Because, again, it wasn't just there on that day. Right? It didn't just show up, but it had been building all along. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's probably two immediately thoughts that come to mind. One is, to your point, like it's hard to be at Georgia. And that's become not a concern. It's been quite the opposite. Like that's kind of a selling point for our program as people know coming in. Like I better not go there unless I'm good at doing hard because it's really, really tough.
One of the things I like high performance and for everybody.
Right. Yeah, it's tough physically, mentally, it's emotionally. It's a hard place to be. Now, the rewards are great, and nights like Saturday night kind of show you why and illustrate that. So, yeah, every day is a challenge. So that's very real. The second thing is there's no doubt, and this is true at all these programs, all three of them, you can absolutely short-circuit thought processes for people. And what I mean by that is like what you spend a lot of time kind of installing over the course of 12 months shows up in moments when you need it the most. So the concept of resilience was not new at all. Yeah. And the concept of overcoming and the concept of not feeling sorry for ourselves, we talk about that all the time. And we do examples of that in the off season in terms of how we train people psychologically. So like we've already short-circuited all those things so that when the time came where we had to be that way, it wasn't anything we hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, if you're waiting for that moment, as Cory said, to say, okay, boys, right, this is where we stand. We lost Carson. We got this. And you're trying to kind of send a message of encouragement and you don't have anything to fall back on, it's going to fall shallow.
Oh, gosh, yes. And so I think we've had all that. And then if there's one thing that's become increasingly true about this team this year, like we're hard to kill.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in like a militaristic sense, of course, but like we're hard to kill. Like we've bended a lot, haven't broken as often, but it's we make it hard to beat us. And that doesn't mean we play great every game. We have not played great every game. But we've been hard to hit the final nail in the coffin and get us out of there. So that we did that Saturday.
Yeah, and what do you want to be known for? Language that we talk a lot about at Clemson, and I think, Drew, I want you to talk about this. Hey, it's for 60 minutes or as long as it takes.
Yeah.
You know,
8 overtimes.
As long as it takes. And so it isn't just for this amount of a game. So talk about that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, the 60 minutes or as long as it takes, that's a big part of how you define resilience. And then the other way to think of it is just like the job's not done until the job's done.
Yeah.
And you don't know exactly when the job's going to be done until there's all zeros on the clock. And I even mentioned to you before the podcast, ironically, someone sent me this, and Coach Sark for Texas's coach, in his post-game comments, said something to the effect of, we were prepared for it to be a 60-minute battle. We weren't prepared for it to be more than 60, which is a little bit mind-boggling that a coach would say that or think that, but it was said. And so, yeah, I mean, like we think about it as like when it's over, but not until then.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything because we play them next, so I'm just going to refrain from any
I
comments.
forgot that for a second.
Yeah, I'm going to refrain from any comments on that.
Yeah, so I think bottom line, it was the first word that I think of when I think about what it took to get that done Saturday was resilience. Yeah. And I think our team has increasingly taken on the identity of not necessarily thinking of ourselves as, in prior years, teams, last several years, they've been probably more of a, for lack of a better term, we kind of had like a sexier way of getting it done. We scored more points. We had bigger margins of victory. That was just, those teams were super talented teams. This year has been a lot more blue collar.
Yeah. But go back to your core values, what are they?
Yeah, connection, resilience, composure, and toughness. So.
Yeah, and so that's, to me, I know resilience is the one you really showed up, but yeah, when it can be a lot more sexy and maybe you have more talent, then it may look a little bit differently. But the foundation, the core, has been building for the last 3 or 4 years, and I love what both of you guys have done around your core values. Hey, this is what they are, but more importantly, this is what they mean, but examples of what it looks like. And those, it just doesn't show up, as you said, Cory, on game day. This is what it looks like. And so connection, you saw the team rally around Gunner, is it Stockton?
Stockton,
yeah. Saw the team rally around. Hey, it doesn't mean we love Carson any less, but we're going to rally about it. And composure, you see all of that show up. And too many times as leaders, we run away from the difficult moments and we don't use the adversity to learn and grow and sharpen us. And I think that's a lesson we can transfer in life and in business as well.
Yep, totally agree. Okay, so enough about the Georgia Bulldogs. Let's talk about the last-second field goal heroics of the Clemson Tigers, which, I mean, for those people who didn't see the game, you want to take us through? Should we start at the final sequence, or where do you want to start?
Yeah, to me, you guys know we're always trying to look for creative, innovative ways to kind of get a message across. And so I was kind of reflecting back on Sunday. My message to the team was using Seabiscuit, the great racehorse, in comparison to War Admiral to set the stage of running your race. I've talked about Secretariat for a long time, putting the blinders on, running your race, accelerate to the finish. And Seabiscuit, everybody, the critics said he couldn't stack up. He didn't belong. Trainers' methods were outdated. The owner didn't know what he was doing. He was a car salesman, and War Admiral represented kind of all that was the East Coast racing establishment. Seabiscuit was too small. He wasn't fast enough. He wasn't strong enough. The only way he ran hard is if you whipped him. And so what he had was a great, and I imagine the horse, I'm just thinking he had a great competitive spirit.
Quick interjection. Did this have anything to do with the fact you were playing the Mustangs?
It could have.
I was thinking the same thing.
Somebody else made that analogy, but I did not. I was not clever enough ahead of time.
Okay.
I was not clever enough ahead of time. And what Seabiscuit and what we all need for us to be who we were created to be and run the race set out in front of us, we need somebody to believe in us.
Right.
And so, like the horse, the owner believed in him. Their trainer believed in him. And so our program was built on belief. And so looking him in the eye and saying, okay, we're going to play for 60 minutes or as long as it takes. And the foundation of our program, the construct I would believe, setting up the sequence, Drew, is belief. Mm-hmm. And Coach Sweeney's talking about, he's got a lot of gifts. One is unwavering belief. How do you keep the faith when it doesn't make any sense? And so, unfortunately, the story worked out just like Seabiscuit. We get off to a big lead, and we're thinking, oh, this is the best we've looked. And all of a sudden we slowed up and had to look them in the eye, and they had all the momentum. 17 points in the fourth quarter. You're thinking that we get this thing to overtime, what's it going to look like? And I'm sure people on the field, in the stands, on TV were doubting. Like, that's what faith is, being sure of what we hope for, certain of doubting, hey, are we going to pull this off? Our kick returner was out with an ACL, backup running back. We put Adam Randall in, who started against Georgia and lost his starting position to start the season. Mm-hmm. You talk about leading. My man just kept leading, kept showing up, not getting any opportunities. And Coach Sweeney looked at him and said, hey, we're like, this isn't a fair catch. You take this thing to the house if you get a chance. He returned it 41 yards, made a big play. Our kicking game has been a struggle all year. We've had a lot of kicks blocked. It's been inconsistent. But that belief, and so we kick a 56, 57-yarder with no time on the clock and 34-degree temperature to win the game and go to the CFP when it all comes down the line. So to me, that unwavering belief, can you believe in yourself and the people you surround yourself with 60 minutes or as long as it takes? I think that, and when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
When it doesn't make sense.
Just to put some context for people who don't know, to get a football to fly 56 yards in the cold at night through an upright
and already missed a previous field goal
is hard.
Yeah, we already missed it.
It's not like you're playing at Mercedes-Benz with ideal conditions, and I'm sure there was wind in his face. Like that's a huge deal.
Yeah,
and so there's belief collectively. I got to think also belief. What about his belief?
Yeah, and so one of the things I love to do is I get to meet with our special teams every week after our team meeting on Thursday. So I speak to the team, they have a special teams meeting, and I meet with all our specialists. And the messaging has been pretty much the last month, keeping the faith. How do you keep the faith? I love about the vision. You got to keep the dream alive. 2, maintain unwavering belief. What are the reasons to believe? And so each week we've walked through with our specialists. I play my best when I'm at my best. What can I control? It's like me. And so we've been creating a message in the mind of it's like me to make these kicks. It's like me to be my best when it matters most. And so that was another opportunity in that moment. He had dreamed, visualized, and believed he had what it took. And that is how he was able to execute. Awesome. We talk about if you let the magnitude of the moment, if you focus on it's going to overwhelm you. And it takes a certain amount of mental toughness and focus to say, I'm just going to focus on this moment right here and let success find me. So that's how I think he was able to do it.
So what about, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit too about what it says about the belief of that team to be able to, I'm going to bring up some bad news here, bear with me. Lost to your rival the week before, unfortunate game, but to be able to flip it that fast and then be able to go win your conference championship, talk a little bit about what you think was at play there to help facilitate that.
How you guys started the season looking back at these moments. What did they say after y'all beat us in Atlanta?
Yeah,
we were done.
Yeah, probably.
Coach Sweeney needs to use this and do that, and Clemson. The game has passed Clemson by, and so you had to fight that narrative all year and really use that as how are we going to respond, get us back to the foundation. Then you lose a game against South Carolina again. You had a chance. We got the lead late, and to be honest, it was a pretty discouraged locker room. Saturday night.
And then even to kind of back into the ACC championship game, because at that point you're waiting on the result of a different game to determine.
Good point.
Completely transparent for me, Corey. I'm in the locker room changing after the South Carolina game, and one of our leaders, not admins, operations guys, sitting there looking at the phone. I'm like, "What's the score?" It's like 21-0 Miami.
I remember that.
I'm like, "Oh boy, okay." Well, what bowl are we going to go? You know what? You got to be human.
Yeah.
Like we talk about unwavering belief while facing the brutal truth. Mm-hmm. And so we spent Saturday night kind of facing the brutal truth, and all of a sudden I ride home and Syracuse gets some momentum. And I think one of the great things about our coach, Coach Sweeney, is I remember Florida State beat us like a drum in 2014 or whatever, 2013. It wasn't even close. James was like, brothers, put a smile on your face that game. Beat us like a drum.
That was my first Clemson game.
Was it? Fact. Coming from Florida State?
I was coming from Florida State, yeah.
And Coach Sweeney's like, I believe if we played him 10 times, we beat him 9 times out of 10. And he believed it.
Good for him.
And so he believed it. And I think that belief is contagious. And so every team meeting, we have a sign on the podium and says believe, and it says it can't be done, and just cross out it can be done. And so from the very beginning of our program, this unwavering belief. And so he came in on Sunday with, hey, this is kind of meant to be. And we didn't make it excuses of, hey, how we got here, but it was, hey, we didn't think we were going to be there.
That's what to me is so impressive. Just outside looking in, is lose to your rival, tough game. Then the sort of just backing into that game, and then to like flip the switch and just have full belief, like, yeah, we're going to go in and win it. Like, that's awesome.
We have opportunities, as you said, each day of how we're going to respond. And each day talk about these little messages. I mean, for the longest time, we've used this, forget what's behind, focus on what's ahead. And so each team meeting has started with you, like you're looking through the windshield of a car. And in the rear view mirror is all the games we've played in the past. And the front is, okay, ACC championship. And so I'm sure yesterday's team meeting or today's team meeting will be, hey, all these games in the past, Texas is in the windshield. And so that's a chance to, even during a game, forget what's behind, focus on what's ahead. What's the next play? What's the next right thing? And how can I give each play a life of its own with that unwavering belief? Doesn't mean we ignore the brutal truth. Doesn't mean like today we aren't breaking down film and maybe, to be honest, breaking down some of our players. But the key is, can I find a reason to believe in this team? That was kind of my message at Thanksgiving. What are the reasons to believe in you? Mm-hmm. What are the reasons to believe in this team? And it's so easy. The world is so full of critics. And a critic's job is to focus on what people can't do. And if you coach that way, you're going to find what you're looking for. But a coach's job is to find a reason to believe in the team you have and the one you're like, love the one you're with.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we've tried to train our coaches over the years and our players. Like, let's find a reason to believe.
Yep. So these three things here's the good news too, is we got more football to play.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, and Cory, you made the statement at the beginning about I have a hard time thinking there's any other psychology practice or company like ours out there that was able to put up those results this weekend. Same is true of now we head to the playoffs, right? So we're super grateful to be excited about what lies ahead for that. And I think there's some future
you guys got a couple
coming.
of buys, so I may need some collective help. I gotta respond a little bit quicker here.
We did get a question around just like, well, what are the next few weeks going to be like for us internally, knowing there's only 12 teams?
Yeah, your lips were sealed when I asked for help this morning. Like nobody said a word.
We're all hunting for the same thing. So
at the moment we're on the other side of the bracket, so I'm happy to be
true.
Civil for now.
You can dream a little bit, talking about having a vision. How awesome would it be that at least somebody in the room is going to be left out? But is there a chance that we're all?
There's a chance.
There's a chance we would play
for the national championship.
No.
But a chance we could play.
There's a chance we could play
for the national championship.
There's a chance we could play in like the.
So that means there's a chance we could play for the national championship.
Correct.
You left that part out.
Well,
talk about belief. Come on, man.
Hey, that's your job, man.
For the record, that part was left out.
Your job is to get them to believe. My job is to
asterisks
establish ourselves as the apex predator.
Keystone.
Okay,
Little old Clemson, just Seabiscuit, just trying to keep up. We're going to run our race. One, I will say it is such a privilege, one, obviously, to be a part of the program, and but also to be a part of your journey, to learn from you guys and figure out, okay, how does it look at Oregon? How does it look at Georgia? And maybe how it looks at Clemson. And what a blessing that is in our life to kind of really learn from each other. And we hope our audience is that, like, the things we talked about had nothing to do with talent today.
Right.
So if you're looking to create a little bit of an edge, if you're looking to create some mental separation from your preparation, one, I hear culture. The culture precedes the championship results. How do you get buy-in? What's the vision? Why do you do what you do? And what I hear over here is resilience. And if there's one opportunity you're going to have in life is to develop some resilience. And sometimes as leaders, and this can be a whole other podcast, as parents, we try to shield our children and people from the very things that can make them tough. Can help them develop some perseverance. And then that reason to believe, that unwavering belief. Face the brutal truth, don't lie to yourself, but maintaining that belief. And so I look forward to hearing how this plays out, for the CFP, but also for our listeners in that process. So what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, so as we kind of get ready to transition toward that, I'm with you, man. I'm just excited about, I want to see, if we can't win, I hope one of y'all do.
Yeah.
Right? I want to see somebody get into the big dance here on January the 20th. Cory, any final thoughts?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. I think this time of year is challenging because it forces us to kind of go back to the drawing board, and it's like, okay, a few more weeks of how do we get these guys motivated and ready to play with the right kind of messaging. So I'm excited. I've never been in this position. You guys have, but I'm looking forward to the chess match.
Awesome.
Well, as always, we're grateful for our listeners. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to our next conversation. Thank you.